Okay, looks like we're being live streamed, ready to go. Um, I just, okay, so welcome everyone to the December meeting of the Judicial Compensation Commission. My name is John Edwards. I am a policy analyst and counsel with the Department of Legislative Services, along with policy analyst Scott Benson and our legislative assistant Jesus Garcia. We are staffing the commission here tonight. I'm going to take you through a quick rundown of the agenda and then we'll get started. If you have any questions about anything along the way, just raise your hand and let me know, and we'll stop and see if we can answer those questions for you. So, first things first, I'm going to take you through an overview of the statutory guidelines and what's the actual mission of the commission and what happens to the recommendations after you submit it to the General Assembly. Then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Zimmerman from DLS, who's going to give us a presentation about the state budget forecast. Then we're going to have the commission select their chair. It's going to be voted on by the members of the chair. I'm sorry, members of the commission. It takes an affirmative vote of 5 of you to vote on anything tonight formally. Don't be too worried about any of the work that might become with chair. We'll help you guide through it. It shouldn't be too much of a burden. Pretty easy. Next, we'll hear from Scott about the rest of a presentation about the numbers around judicial salaries in Maryland and comparing them to other states. Then we'll hear a presentation from the judiciary, along with what they have in terms of recommendations for you all this year. Then we'll open it up to the members of the commission to discuss, debate about what recommendations you want to put forth to the General Assembly. And then finally, next steps, either if you vote on any recommendations tonight, or if we need to set up another meeting, we'll deal with it at that point. So I will get us going with an overview of this statutory code that governs the commission. So Scott, if you can share your screen.
Can everyone see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So in the Courts and Judicial Proceedings article of the Maryland State Code in Title I, Subtitle 7, it is what governs all of the processes and the establishment of the commission and gives you all your mission. So we can scroll down to Exhibit 2, Scott. So the commission meets every 4 years to review the salaries and pensions of judges. The commission makes recommendations to the end that the judicial compensation structure is adequate to assure that highly qualified persons are attracted to the bench and can continue to serve without undue economic hardship. The members of the commission elect a member to serve as chair, and you need at least 5 of the members voting in the affirmative for any of the formal actions of this commission tonight, including choosing the chair. The recommendations from the commission have to be introduced as a joint resolution in each house of the General Assembly no later than the 15th day of session, and then the General Assembly has to act within 15 days of that introduction date. The General Assembly can decrease the recommendations that you all give them, but they can't decrease it any lower than what is currently set at. They also cannot increase. If the General Assembly doesn't adopt or amend the joint resolution, it just becomes law as you guys submit to them. You can also recommend if you have any recommendations regarding pensions. However, that has to be introduced by the presiding officers, and that has to be passed by both chambers in order for it to become law, which is different than just the regular salary recommendations that you all may make tonight. Additionally, in any year where a judge or justice's salary is increased in accordance with the recommendations that you all put forth, they cannot receive any general salary increase that is awarded to state employees, such as a cost of living increase. So with that, with a quick overview, does anyone have any questions before we move on to the state budget forecast? No, seeing none. Ms. Zimmerman, if you're ready to go to give your presentation, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, so I am Tanya Zimmerman. I'm the operating budget manager for the Department of Legislative Services. I'm going to just walk through a few slides here discussing the forecast for the operating budget. So this first chart here looks at both the cash and the structural outlook. The structural outlook compares the ongoing revenue compared to the ongoing spending. So if it is negative, that would mean the ongoing spending exceeds the ongoing revenue. The blue bars represent the cash balance. As you can see, this forecast shows that in the November Spending Affordability Committee briefing, which is where this was initially presented, that DLS was forecasting a cash shortfall of $1.5 billion in fiscal 2027. That shortfall grows in the subsequent years to about $3.2 billion in 2028, continuing to grow to about $4 billion in fiscal 2030, which is the worst year of the cash shortfall. The structural shortfall begins in fiscal 2026, about $260 million, growing to about $1.2 billion in fiscal 2027, continuing to grow with substantial increase in fiscal 2028, and reaching about $3.8 billion in 2030, which is the worst year of the structural shortfall forecast. This slide here looks at the ongoing spending increases since fiscal 2022 through the forecast period of fiscal 2031 compared to the revenue increases. You can see that spending began to outpace revenue by fiscal in the last couple of years, and is expected to continue to outpace revenue through 2031, with average annual growth of 5.6% for spending and 3.4% for revenue. And the final slide that I have for you looks at what the drivers of the growth are. The largest component of the growth in terms of dollars, and the second highest share of the percentage growth is in education aid, which is forecast to increase by about $3.9 billion. Entitlements, primarily Medicaid, as well as some of the other cash assistance, and also beginning in fiscal 2028, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program increases by about $1.2 billion. And then employee salaries and benefits increased by 3.6%. This assumes a 2% general salary increase in fiscal 2027. Beginning in fiscal 2028, DLS's forecast assumes a 1% salary increase for state employees, as well as increments. And this also includes growth that would be related to fringe benefits like retirement, as well as health insurance. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. I don't see any questions. So we will move on to the next up on the agenda, which is the selection of the commission chair. So the members, all of you, will vote. Out of you said 5 votes are needed in order to approve. Is there anybody who wants to volunteer themselves up for the position? I promise it's not, it won't be too much of a burden. We'll, all 3 of us over here will help you through the entire process. You won't have to do much at all. We just do have to, statutorily, we do have to appoint a chair.
If we're looking for volunteers, I'd be happy to serve as chair since I was on the commission 4 years ago as well.
Oh, great. I think we can vote by a show of hands. So if you approve of Miss Casey's nomination, just raise your hand, please. 2, 3. That's a unanimous vote. Okay, great. Chair Casey, welcome. Congratulations. So with that, we're going to move on to Scott's overview of the compensation materials.
All right, good evening, everybody. You can see my screen again, correct? Okay. So picking back off where we were, over the last 4 fiscal years, there's been an increase in judicial salaries of $40,000. That's $10,000 every fiscal year, with a total impact of about $30.1 million over the last 4 fiscal years. Now, as you can see in this exhibit here, on average, judicial salaries over this period has increased by 21.66%. But taking a look at the Maryland judicial salary increases compared to national judicial salary rankings, you can see nationally for the highest appellate court for the chief judge, Maryland ranks 10th nationally at $255,433. Regionally, for the highest appellate court chief judge, Maryland ranks 6th in the region. Looking at, for highest appellate court for associate judge, Maryland ranks 13th nationally with $236,433. Regionally, for the same highest appellate court associate judge, Maryland ranks 6th in the region. For intermediate appellate court for associate judge, Maryland ranks 13th nationally at $223,633. While for the same regionally, Maryland ranks 4th. And for general jurisdiction courts associate judge, Maryland ranks 14th nationally at $214,433. And regionally, again, for general jurisdiction court, Maryland ranks 6th. So moving on to Exhibit 6, taking a look at Maryland's comparison with national average salaries. So between July 1st, 2021 and July 1st, 2025, there was between a 15.07% and a 15.87% increase nationally in judicial salaries. While for Maryland, there's during the same period, there's an increase between 18.57% and 22.93%. Taking a look at federal court salaries, you can see that there has been a fairly substantial increase for a lot of federal court salaries as well. Take the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, for example, from $280,500 to $317,500, as well as even Court of Appeals judges with a nearly $30,000 increase during that period. Taking a look now at salaries of selected Maryland state officials, to highlight, the governor's salary has increased between calendar 2022 and 2026 from $180,000 to $195,000. Lieutenant governor has increased slightly more by $25,500 during that same period. And the General Assembly has seen an increase with your General Assembly members getting about a $6,000 increase in salaries during the same period. Moving on to salaries of Maryland cabinet officials, you can see the highest increase of a salary has been for the Secretary of Budget and Management, whose salary has increased 44.03% between fiscal 2022 and 2026, while the lowest has been the Secretary of Higher Education, which has only increased 5.8% over the same period. Turning now to state employee compensation history. So I won't go too much in depth, but I will recap the last few fiscal years. In 2023, there was a general salary increase of 3% or 4.5% for law enforcement, while in fiscal 2024, there's an increase of 2%, a 3% increase in fiscal 2025, and fiscal 2026 saw a 1% general salary increase. And moving on now to our final exhibit. You can see here, this is a comparison of Maryland state retirement and pension plans. Looking at like participation, judges, similar to a lot of other state employees, are participation's a condition of employment, while vesting begins immediately, as opposed to other state employees who generally have terms of service. Such as like the General Assembly with 8 years of service, or employees in teacher pension systems like 5 years of service. Looking at employee contributions, judges have a 8% contribution for 8% of salary contribution for 16 years, and this is similar to the General Assembly. General Assembly has a 7% of salary for 22 years, 3 months. And moving on to, no, it's on this page. Moving on to post-retirement adjustments. Judges, adjustments are based on salaries of active judges, which is kind of similar to the General Assembly as well as the governor, which are also like based on current salaries of active members. And if there are no more questions, I believe that concludes the presentation, unless anyone has any questions. Oh, yes.
Are there projections at this point as to what other groups of state employees increases are going to be for next year?
That is not something that, usually it's estimated at about like 2%. However, that's never a guarantee. It really depends on what happens once the General Assembly meets.
Okay.
But there is a separate commission, is this right, that's considering increases to the salary of the executive branch officials as well as the General Assembly?
Yeah, I believe there is a few other commissions working to basically doing what you guys are doing, looking at kind of the salaries of legislators as well as the salaries of the governor or other executive officials.
I was just remembering that 4 years ago when we did this, we knew what was happening in those arenas. But those commissions haven't met or haven't made their decisions yet?
I don't believe so. I don't think we have the final decision from them yet.
Scott, I too, like Vicki and Megan, were on the commission 4 years ago, and I seem to remember a chart that showed the past years, the increments each of every 4 years, and it showed that were sometimes when there were some periods where there wasn't an increase. Is that chart in this handout that we just missed?
Are you referring to the general salary increases and how?
The recommendations for judicial salaries and how many, which one, like some years I believe there was nothing recommended, and I just wanted to get a sense on what has been the trend, because I think I remember seeing that 4 years ago when we were going through this exercise.
So I think I know what exhibit you're talking about. We've just went ahead and we updated it. I believe it was one of the first exhibits. I believe it was probably this one here.
That doesn't go back too far.
Right. It's just what we're saying is we went ahead and updated it on the last set of recommendations.
I guess I'm looking for a trend of increases and not just the most recent window that this spreadsheet shows, like going back maybe 20 years and getting a sense of what was the recommendation? What was the action taken in the last 20 years for the judicial salaries?
I'm not sure a spreadsheet or I don't believe that there is I don't believe there's an exhibit with all that kind of data collected. However, we can look into it further and see if there's see if we can pull any information.
Well, at a minimum, John, I agree that last time we had data that went back at least 8 years, I think.
Yeah.
Because we made decisions based on the fact that there had been some gaps in previous cycles.
Right.
So I understand what you're looking for.
Yeah, I don't know if the staff obviously has turned over, but if anyone is custodian of the documents that were sent out to the commission 4 years ago, it was in that gave us, I thought it was longer, but maybe it was only 8 years, but it showed a little bit of a past trend. And that was kind of helpful as we saw the big picture.
Does anyone have any other questions? All right. If not, I'll go ahead and turn things over to the judiciary.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I am Matt Fader. I'm the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Maryland. I want to begin by just expressing my sincere thanks and appreciation to the members of the Judicial Compensation Commission. I know this is volunteer work for you, and we're very appreciative of the public service you're providing in this role. I also want to express my appreciation for the members of the Judiciary's Special Committee on Judicial Compensation, which is primarily responsible for preparing the materials that you're going to have from the judiciary side, and you'll hear from 3 of them in this presentation. I know compensation for judges can be a tough subject. Judges do earn more than most people, and we get that. But most judges earn a fraction of what they could command on the open market for other jobs for which they're very well qualified, and you'll hear some more of that in the presentation. And ultimately, judicial compensation is about attracting and retaining the highest quality and most dedicated people to do the important work of ensuring justice for the people of Maryland. The work judges do around the state every day is critical work. It's adhering to the rule of law, ensuring equal justice under law, and providing fair, effective, and efficient justice for everyone in this state. When we have the ability to recruit and retain people who are best suited to those roles, the people of Maryland win. Right now, when cost of living is factored in, which is some data that we'll be going over in our presentation, we're behind most other states in many important respects and other passages as well. At the same time, we are also very cognizant of the current economic environment, which has weighed heavily in the special committee's approach that you're going to hear about. So again, we're very appreciative of your willingness to take on this important charge. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. And with that, I'm going to take a quiet seat and turn the program over to the chair of the special committee, Justice Jonathan Biron. Justice Biron, you're not indicated as being on mute, but we can't hear you.
Now at all?
Yes.
All right. I'll just get closer to what I assume is the microphone. Thank you very much, Chief Justice Fader and members of the committee. Thank you for inviting us to join you today. I'm honored to speak with you in my capacity as chair of our Special Committee on Judicial Compensation. With me today are 2 other members of our committee, Chief Judge John Morrissey of the District Court of Maryland and Judge Stacey Mayer of the Circuit Court for Baltimore County. Our committee has been meeting regularly for the last few months in anticipation of presenting to you this evening. We have drafted a detailed report, which I understand you have received, and that contains a great deal of data relating to judicial salaries, some of which you've seen already from Mr. Benson, and some additional data that I think Judge Mayer will cover in a moment. Do the members of the commission have any preliminary questions for me at this time? If not, I will initially turn our presentation over to Judge Mayer to summarize some of the key points of our report and including our committee's recommendations regarding judicial salaries over the next 4 fiscal years. Judge Mayer.
Thank you, Justice Braun. Good evening, everybody. To the initial question, I just having viewed this previously, there is in the 2022 report Exhibit 1.1 that does go show the trends and the increases both proposed and actually the action taken dating back to 1983. So I just point that out.
Judge Mayer, I'm sorry, was that in the judiciary's report from
No, that's in
2022?
the commission's report. It's on the website. If you go um, on, it's in the actual commission's report.
I see.
And it's listed as the 2022 report. It's Exhibit 1.1 attached there too. So thank you all very much. We have also submitted to you all a report with some accompanying data, which we hope you find helpful. And I'm not going to go into all those details and bore you to tears, just go over and highlight a few salient points. You'll see in the analysis that we've provided that the cost of living in the Baltimore, Washington area, with which we're all familiar, has significantly outpaced judicial wage growth. In the last 20 years, anywhere, depending upon the particular court division, approximately 10 to 30%. It's not unreasonable, I don't think, also to expect continued inflationary pressure on salaries over the next several years. With the last salary adjustment from July 1st of 2024, when you factor in the cost of living, and you look at our regional rankings, with that factored in, our Supreme Court justices rank 37 out of the 50 states, and our intermediate appellate courts rank 35th out of the 50 states. Our circuit court judicial salaries, when cost of living is factored in, rank 38 of the 50 states. And our regional rankings among similar comparable jurisdictions, DC, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Delaware, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island, and Virginia, show something similar in terms of the pattern when you factor in the cost of living, with circuit court judges ranking 7 out of 9, and our intermediate appellate court judges ranking similarly 7 out of 9. And, additionally, as I think the DLS presentation showed, despite the commission's goal at one time of bringing parity with federal judicial salaries, there does continue to be a widening gap between those, which does, in terms of our proximity, particularly to DC, put some pressure on the ability to attract talent. When you also look at other legal professionals within the state, there's a similar lag. When you look at law professors, their average salary with the two law schools, University of Baltimore and University of Maryland, the average professor salary at University of Baltimore is higher than our district court judges. And the University of Maryland average law professor makes more than $40,000 more a year than our circuit court judges, and more than $53,000 more a year than our district court judges. In terms of other legal professionals in our area, the average for a DC law firm first-year associate is more than $22,000 more than a district court judge, and by the fourth year, the salaries are more than $53,000 more than our Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And those salary differentials certainly negatively affect the ability to attract and retain qualified candidates as judges. And of course, the 2021 Commission recommended an increase in part to help attract talent with more competitive wages, and in part to recognize the inflationary pressures and the cost of living in our jurisdiction. And that increase from 2021 to the present, which was recommended by the prior commission and adopted by the General Assembly, and for which we are very appreciative, thank you, was a cumulative approximately 18% increase phased in over 4 years. And while that certainly helped us gain in competitive rankings in terms of absolute dollars, it did not much alter the placement when you factor in the cost of living, frankly, in terms of the rankings. Of course, as public servants, we are mindful of the state's current fiscal climate, and based on discussions with legislative leaderships and the challenging outlook for the state, we think it prudent, and we've decided not to ask for salary increases in the next 2 fiscal years in light of the presentation that you've seen. We are, though, respectfully recommending an increase of 6% less than what was previously increased in the last cycle, for an increase of 12% in the latter 2 years of this 4-year cycle. So it would be our respectful recommendation and included in our presentation that there be no salary increase in July 1 of 2026, no salary increase in July 1 of 2027, in deference to the fiscal climate. And then a request of an increase of $12,500 in July of 2028 and $15,000 in July of 2029. We would also respectfully recommend, if you would consider, and if you do consider any increases, that they be applied equally on a dollar for dollar amount, a total dollar amount to each of our judges, rather than as a percentage increase, so that we don't widen the gap amongst our divisions and create greater wage disparity. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I greatly thank you for your time.
My one question is, part of the earlier presentation showed that the state's fiscal issues are going to get worse as the years go on. Did you have that information when you decided to shift to the last 2 years and kind of put it all in there as opposed to across the 4 years?
I think we all have seen the fiscal outlook but recognize that there will be some perhaps there will be some action on the General Assembly and looking at some of the structural issues, and they'll have more time to deal with it, as opposed to in the earlier years being able to make those particular decisions. So that's, I think, why we chose to make that recommendation and to be prudent in that way. But Justice Fader may have some other thoughts.
I just want to add one additional point, which was that was suggested by legislative leadership.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, legislative leadership suggested deferring any increases until the last 2 years.
Yes, not asking for increases in at least the first year and probably the first 2 years, and then doing it in the last 2.
I see. And I see for the DLS staff, I see Ms. Zimmerman, it looks like, has left the call. Perhaps I should have asked this question when she was on, but that the graph that she showed us, is that sort of presuming that nothing changes? That there aren't some of the structural changes that Judge Mayer was suggesting might be put in place?
Yeah, it's my understanding that graph that Ms. Zimmerman was showing us is assuming that everything remains the same, that there are no changes to either the budget or tax code if things continue as they are.
Thank you.
Judge Mayer, question for you. I appreciate the sensitivity and the insight from the legislators. Is your formal request for salary recommendations in your document? I couldn't see it as you were speaking. Is it in there?
Yeah. It is in our report. Yes, indeed, sir.
The report that we received from staff?
Yes, I think that maybe that was received yesterday. I'm not 100%. Yes. Okay. So yes, that is included in our report to your commission.
Okay.
On page 18.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Casey.
No, of course. And I do have a question about the recommendation for the additional stipend for administrative judges, but I'm happy to defer that if someone else would be speaking to that, Judge Mayer.
I think Chief Judge Morrissey is going to speak to that issue. But thank you very much. I'll defer to Justice Braun.
It's a great segue to the next topic, because next on my agenda was to ask Chief Judge Morrissey to turn to that very topic. As you flagged, Ms. Casey, we do in our report have a separate recommendation relating to our administrative judges, and Chief Judge Morrissey will now discuss that.
Thank you, Justice Braun, and great question, Ms. Casey. If you remember, I know a couple of you were on the committee before this topic came up. I'm sorry, the commission before, with respect to additional compensation for administrative judges. There are 12 district court administrative judges, and there are 20. The district court is statewide system, and we're broken into districts. There's some districts that have multiple counties in them. Others are their own district, like Baltimore City, Prince George's, Anne Arundel, the larger ones. The circuit court's a little different. Each county, it's county-based, and so each county has its own administrative judge. So between the district and the circuit court, there's 36 administrative judges. We've also made a recommendation with respect to the chief judge of the appellate court of Maryland. Currently, the chief judge only makes $3,000 more than the other appellate court judges, and we thought to acknowledge all the work for all the administrative judges, and those duties range from supervision of the other judges there in their particular circuit or district or court, not just the judges, but their bailiffs, any other people working in the courthouse, the clerks, the administrators. They have control over the trial and calendars that they have to manage. We try to keep to time standards, and we have a good report this year on our time standards, having almost completely rebound from COVID. They prepare the court's budgets and submissions on the district court to myself, on the circuit court to Chief Justice Fader. They have COOP plans that they're responsible for. We've had to enact multiple, continuation of operation plans. One as recently as this past week, where a truck apparently parked in the parking lot of our one of the courthouses in Baltimore City, and it idled all night long, and that was sucked into our air ducts and gave a odor inside the courthouse, and we were able to shift the operations to a different courthouse. They serve as the final authority for facility emergencies. I could go on and on. They do all the purchasing. They are a jack of all trades, basically. Their duties are prescribed by rule and statute, and so they have this is doing this all while doing their own regular job as a judge. When we discussed it in the prior commission, the decision was because of the raise that you all had approved in that commission that we would defer for a year on this issue. And then it just kind of got lost. The commission had agreed that they'd reform, but if you remember, we were right in the middle of COVID during that period of time, and I think there was just a lot going on. We were really focusing at that point on maintaining our own continuation of operations because of the pandemic. So it never came back up, really. What we're recommending to the commission is a nominal amount to recognize the extra duties that these judges take on. And we made a recommendation of $7,500 per year for each, just a one-time increase of $7,500 to whoever holds the seat of that administrative judge. It's a nominal amount in terms of the entire judiciary's budget, and all in with benefits, and it's less than $300,000 a year that it would add to the judiciary's budget. We believe that it'd be just a token to show those judges that we very much appreciate the dedicated service that they provide. It's kind of a thankless job, as you can imagine. I once was told that herding judges or managing judges was like herding cats, and I responded, no, it's like herding lions. They have kind of large personalities, and so the administrative judges are on the front line of managing that day in and day out each courthouse, and they do a really fantastic job. So we'd respectfully request, or at least recommend to this commission, that they consider giving an increase to the administrative judges, and our internal committee recommended $7,500 as a one-time increase per year. Thank you very much for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions with respect to that.
Thank you, Chief Judge Morrissey. I have two questions. One may be more properly directed to DLS, so I'll start with the first for you, which is, how did the committee arrive at $7,500? I appreciated the survey information provided in the committee's report about what supplements, what stipends were available in other states. How did $7,500 become the recommendation?
So if you notice, the salary structure is based off the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Maryland, and everyone is a proportion of that down. And this was kind of where we found it slated in between, so we wouldn't bump up above a higher court, yet at the same time give them an increase above what the other judges on their bench do. My own is the equivalent of my own salary, and I'm not asking, the committee's not asking for an increase in my salary. It's the equivalent of a appellate court judge, an associate judge of the appellate court. So we try to keep it all in line, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. My other question, maybe for Mr. Benson or Mr. Garcia, is about our authority. My recollection, and my fellow commission members might remember this too, who served 4 years ago, was that what caused this to pause 4 years ago was we were not sure whether the commission had the authority to instate what we were thinking of as sort of a different salary level. And I appreciate the description of this as an additional, as a stipend, and maybe thinking of it in that way avoids the problem. But is this something that DLS has considered?
I'll say that I remember the same thing, and I think that there needed to be legislative language created. And I thought part of the delay was that the judiciary was going to go back and look into what legislative language needed to be added to the law that would allow us to do that.
That's
I don't know what did or didn't happen, but
I agree.
So to Mr. Benson or Mr. Garcia, is that something that DLS has examined with legislative staff, whether or not there needs to be legislative language added, and whether this is something that the commission can act on at this time to institute or recommend a stipend of the type that the judiciary is recommending?
It is my understanding there hasn't been anything looked into or changed in that respect from the last time. So I think it would be in a similar posture to how you were looking at it in the last cycle.
so who can give us some sort of confirmation that it wasn't an actual, it has to happen, that there needed to be language. It was suggested it had to happen. And I think that we needed some research done in order to tell us exactly what didn't have to happen and whether it needed to come from the judiciary or some other place. Who can you guys do that for us? Look into that in quick order. We don't want to drop this again just because things didn't happen that should have happened.
Precisely. And I'm wondering if perhaps it's a question for the members of the Office of the Attorney General who provide advice to the General Assembly. Would that be the right group to ask?
That would be my recommendation, Ms. Casey. That is who I believe would be the proper party to look at that issue.
I think it should go to DLS attorneys for guidance.
Right, the Attorney General for the Department of, or either for the General Assembly or DLS, one or the other.
Right.
Yes, we can reach out and let you know what they say.
What is our timeline for getting this decision to completion in order to get it into the budget?
The statutory deadline for the recommendations from this commission is the end of the month. To have a report finalized. I will reach out and try to get a quickest response as I can. It may be difficult just considering the holidays coming up and some people may be slow to respond, but I will do my best to get a quick response from them as fast as possible.
It's possible that the team that was here before you 4 years ago did something and that's in your files and we could learn from that somehow or another, but anything that could expedite it.
I'll also check with that. There was nothing communicated to us about that in the handoff, but I will double check with that, and I will also reach out to Attorney General, see of their advice on the situation.
Because I don't want to speak for the other members of the commission, but I think that we were sensitive to this and wanted to try to do something, whether it was going to be the specific amount that was requested or something else. We hadn't even gotten to that point, but we were, we understood the need and we were generally in favor. And I'm not speaking for everybody, but I felt that that was,
I think there was some support for the concept of it.
yeah, thanks.
Yes, and my recollection further is that to your point, Chief Judge Morsi, about it kind of fading into the background. My recollection is the commission reached out to DLS and considered trying to reconvene
Right.
some months or even a year later, and was told that we did not have the authority to reconvene.
Yeah, exactly. We only could meet once.
So we have to address this now, or else we lose the opportunity.
Exactly. That's right.
And we can meet multiple. Last year we had 2 meetings. We did one in November and one in December, if memory serves. So we're not limited to one meeting, but we're limited to one block of decisions, I guess. So we need to do it now, if at all possible.
Question, Chief Judge. This is a request for a stipend of the amount, not an increase of their base salary, correct?
That's correct.
And so I guess the question is, because I remember this same conversation came up last cycle as well, as everyone has said. And so does it matter if it's an increase in your base salary that we have the authority versus a stipend, which is a annual stipend at the end of that period of time, though, that will go away? If we increase their base salary, then that becomes a part of that for the future. But just by providing the stipend, that becomes a annual one-time until it sunsets, which is very different.
I do have one point on that, which is that this is not necessarily a permanent position. So if it were a permanent increase, then if they stopped being administrative judge and somebody else did, then you'd have constitutional issue maybe with reducing the salary to a regular judge's salary. So that's another factor.
That's helpful. And I think that, so Mr. Edwards, I would say that if it's helpful for me to be part of those conversations, or certainly, Victoria and John and I and Carlos can go back through our emails and sort of piece together kind of what was discussed before. We're happy to provide you with that information. I think the way that Carlos just suggested, analyzing it could be helpful. It's sort of what are the different ways that we can think about analyzing this to avoid any legal issues.
There is some precedent in my particular salary, because I am only entitled to the salary, and I serve at the pleasure of Chief Justice Fader. I'm only entitled to that salary while holding the position of Chief Judge of the District Court. If I were to, I believe under the current statutory language, if I were no longer the Chief Judge, and I hope that doesn't happen, Chief Justice Fader, but if I were no longer the Chief Judge, I would go back to an associate judge salary. So there is some precedent for that in the statute. If time were running out and you weren't able to get an opinion from the Attorney General, perhaps a recommendation that the Maryland legislature consider legislation to enact what your recommendation would be of increasing the salary of the administrative judge during the term that they serve as administrative judge.
If there are no further questions or comments on that, I just want to add that I really appreciate what has been said here on this issue, and appreciate I think the support that's been expressed for this concept. And of course, we would like to help as much as we can. It sounds like, at least in the first instance, DLS and the Attorney General's office it would fall to them to kind of try to implement this. But I want to offer whatever assistance they think we might be able to give. So please, John and Scott, feel free to reach out to me if you think there's something we can do to help. The only other point that I wanted to raise tonight is one that, as I'll explain, I don't actually think it's ripe for your consideration this evening, to the extent you're going to consider anything this evening, but I want to flag it for you. You'll see in our report, we also discussed the possibility of recommending amendments to the Maryland Code involving pension provisions that affect a subset of Maryland judges. Approximately 90 currently active judges previously served as attorneys within government agencies such as the Office of Public Defender, the State's Attorney's Office, Office of the Attorney General, or certain county attorney offices. And during that time, they became vested in the Maryland Employees Retirement or Pension System. Now, ordinarily, those employees would be entitled to receive their vested retirement allowance in the form of monthly payments upon reaching age 62 or 65, depending on their employment start date. But current Maryland law prohibits active judges from receiving their vested allowances while serving on the bench. This restriction effectively defers the right of these judges to collect pre-funded, earned retirement benefits from prior state service until they retire or resign from judicial service. So just to make it concrete, imagine that there's a judge who worked for 20 years as a public defender before becoming a judge, and now they've reached the age when they typically could begin receiving their vested pension allowance for their prior government service. If they'd gone into private practice instead of becoming a judge, they'd be receiving that monthly pension benefit right now, but because they're a judge, they have to wait until they retire from the judiciary to do so. We would like to see the law changed so that the 90 or so judges who are affected in this way may receive their vested pension benefits that have already been pre-funded at the time they otherwise would be entitled to do so if they hadn't become judges. We fear that the present state of the law may incentivize some affected judges to retire from judicial service earlier than they otherwise would in order to be able to receive earlier earned pension benefits. And we fear that it might deter some qualified public sector attorneys from applying to be judges, especially young people, in the first place. We're in the process of coordinating with the Maryland State Retirement and Pension Board regarding amendments to the relevant statutes that would affect this change in the law. And while we think this would be potentially within the bailiwick of this commission, one thing we're still discussing internally and that we expect we'll discuss some more with the Retirement Board in the coming days is whether the judiciary ultimately should put the proposed amendments in as a bill itself, or whether we should continue with what had been actually our original idea of asking you all to include some proposed legislative changes in your recommendation to the General Assembly. We've gotten a draft of language from the State Retirement Board, who are working with their Assistant Attorney General who handles these things. That's under review right now. So we would be able to give you in very short order proposed language. But as I said, we want to make sure that we think that the best way to approach this, given where it would go in the General Assembly, is to ask you to consider doing it, or whether we should find a sponsor or put it in ourselves. So we expect that we'll be back in touch with commission staff about this pension issue very soon. But since it's in our report, I didn't want to leave the topic unmentioned. Are there any questions from anyone about that?
So I'll share that it's not just the judiciary that has issues with this kind of thing. I retired from the Maryland General Assembly staff and was called back in and started collecting my pension, and was called back in to help out during all of the COVID activities, only to have my pension stop coming without notice to me whatsoever. So there had to be, and I'm going to forget what year it was, 21 probably. There was special legislation put in. I was not the only one. There were about 20 people who got called back into work, and it was in violation of the pension law, but nobody thought about it at the time because we were just all trying to help out. So a special bill went in, two of them went in actually, to take care of that and retroactively paid us what we had been denied during that time. So it's a more cloudy issue across all of state government, I think, and working with the pension team is probably your best approach to start with. That's what I ended up doing with a few other people, and they were very, and then I had to get senators and delegates to go along with, sponsoring the legislation so that we could all get our pensions back again. So it's complicated. I appreciate what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it'd be my experience when I was a deputy secretary DBM that this would fall under the purview of pension, and I think the legislature would, if it didn't, they would go to them to think, ask them what they think. So I think if he starts off with them supporting it, I think that gives it the strongest thing. I don't think we're the proper platform for that. I mean, we could be an ancillary support or whatever, but I think the pension system needs to be the one bringing this issue and asking for the change, because they're the ones who are going to be administering it. So I would think that you need to make your pitch with them.
We have made our pitch to them, and that's why they asked the Attorney General's office to draft legislation to make this change. So I think it's fair to say they support it, but I hear exactly what you're saying, and it may well be that upon further reflection, we may just seek to leave you all out of it, but we want to have some further discussions with them and internally before we make a final decision about what we at least would ask for. But I appreciate the feedback very much.
Justice Barron, so I have a comment or question about the concept in general. So it seems to me that it's an issue of being penalized for longevity in state service and therefore delaying pension, so forth. But I guess I think about an employee who starts the bottom level and works up to be a state secretary or whatever, and that might be in their 35th or 40th year or whatever. They were going to encounter that same kind of decision there. And so I don't know if it's unique to the group that you're talking about. I think it happens often. It's a decision the employee has to make as they move up the ladder, or however you want to call it. So I don't think it would be applicable, or I don't think it's only happening to that group. So I think you need to be eyes wide open that that's an issue that I think is broader than just the judicial system, because I can see a number of people that I work with in my career that had that decision. You know, I got my time in, I can retire, but I've got an opportunity to keep advancing, keep earning some more salary. Do I just take the retirement? And so I think it happens more often than maybe people think. So just a comment to be aware that it's out there in other agencies as well, I think.
It is.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, I agree that the issue we're talking about generally, we know is not confined just to the judiciary. And certainly to the extent to the extent there's interest at the General Assembly at looking at this more holistically and us being a part of it, we would welcome, I'm sure, becoming part of that process. But we figured we would start with just ourselves and see where it goes.
Justice Barron, have you seen examples of judges retiring earlier than they may have otherwise because of this issue?
I can't say that we've gotten that feedback about specific people, but it's a concern that has been expressed to me by people who are well aware of the situation and at least are thinking, about their future careers. They haven't left yet, but it's on their minds. And I can't say that people who have left, there may be someone who was motivated by that, but I can't point to a specific example yet of someone who has left.
I have a question related to that point, not about pensions. I do remember 4 years ago when the judiciary made its presentation, there was some discussion about the concern that there were not sufficient applicants for some of the open vacancies in the judiciary, and concern that the failure of salaries of the judiciary to keep pace with inflation and cost of living was part of the reason for that. And I did not, perhaps I missed it, but I didn't see anything about that in the report, and was wondering if that continued to be the case, or if that was anything that any of you from the judiciary would like to comment on.
I would say it's and again, this is more anecdotal. I haven't seen an actual analysis of all the openings that have come up in the 4 years since the last time we were doing this. But I will say that if you go to the website, Maryland, that if you Google Maryland judicial vacancies, you'll see openings currently. And there are some instances, and I definitely have noticed some circuit court, especially circuit court openings with really not very many applicants at all. In some jurisdictions, I would say it's been a more robust applicant pool, but there are at least a few that I've seen in the last year, especially with just a handful of, a few people applying. Now, of course, we haven't surveyed them to ask exactly, and those are the ones who did apply. It's hard you can't prove the negative about why people don't apply, but that has, to some extent at least, in my observation, has remained what I would say is a problem. We certainly have, let me put it this way, we have not seen like a real big influx of applicants compared to what we were seeing, 4 years ago and before that. And I don't know if Chief Justice Fader has additional insight or has looked at this more closely, but that's what I've noticed.
Yeah, so we obviously don't hire our own people in that way, so we're not at the front of that. But I'll make a couple of points. One is that I know Governor Moore has sent back lists because of not having enough people on a couple of occasions. And it's my understanding from his office that that in discussions with people who might put in for a vacancy, that is a part of an indication, especially in the jurisdictions around the Washington, D.C. area, of why they don't. But because that's Governor Moore's the one who appoints, not us. So that really is where those communications would happen.
And Ms. Casey, I also know of one, you hear about this because it's kind of proving a negative, right, of what people don't apply and why they don't apply. But I know of one attorney in Frederick County that's a very prominent attorney, and I asked him, because I thought he'd be a good judge, are you thinking about applying? And he said, I can't do it. I can't afford it. His children and my children go to the same college. So I said, I'm doing it, but I don't think he was willing to take the pay cut, quite frankly.
Well, that is the extent of what we wanted to present to you this evening. I want to again thank you all very much for your time tonight and for all the time that you have put in and will put in. Echo what Chief Justice Fader said at the outset. We're really grateful that you volunteered to do this. We would be happy if there will be another meeting or meetings. We of course would be more than happy to return and answer additional questions, provide whatever additional information we can to help you in your work. We're happy to stick around now, just in case you have more questions for the duration of your meeting. If you'd prefer that we be on our way, we'll also, of course, we'll defer to your wishes there, but we would look to you for guidance on that. And with that, I just want to say thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So next would be the discussion of potential recommendations. I know in terms of the stipend issue, we're going to be working on getting an answer for you all. I've reached out to the AG to see what their opinions are. We're also seeing if we can find anything left over from the last 4 years from the last staff. Is there anything that the commission would like to discuss in terms of the other recommendations that the judiciary put forth?
Well, I would like to say just to start, I do think we should have a second meeting. I think it would be helpful. I note that we did not receive the judiciary's, and I'm not casting blame on anyone for any of this. I understand it's very busy, and it was, some of our appointments didn't come through until very recently, but we did not receive the reports until yesterday and today. So I think, if nothing else, I think all of us perhaps need a little bit more time to digest the written materials that we've received, and then have some reconvene better able to discuss what we've heard this evening.
I agree with you, Megan.
Yep, I second that.
Okay, then in terms of scheduling a next meeting, is like a next week, would that be enough time to review everything?
I think it has to be enough time that you can actually bring back. So one thing, us reviewing the data, but also too answering those questions that we had about that. So how much time do you think you're going to need from the judiciary to be able to answer our questions, really? That's what it kind of boils down to.
In my experience, they do tend to get back to us in a few days with an answer. So I think at least tentatively scheduling a meeting for next week should be enough time to hear back from them.
So maybe we should look at later in the week next week, Thursday or Friday, perhaps, if we can find a time that works for everyone to give sufficient time.
I can meet earlier in the week. Thursday and Friday, I'm going to be traveling. It may be difficult. I can meet Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay. Well, I don't want to keep everyone, and certainly not all of our judges, while we figure out scheduling. But I think we can find a time that will work for everyone on the commission next week, especially if it's virtual. I think that should be feasible.
Maybe suggestion, maybe if we just have the other guests drop off and just have the staff and the members while we're all here. I'm sure it'd be a lot easier for the staff to have us look at our calendars while we're sitting here instead of herding the cats to get it. So maybe, is that possible? Megan, I would defer to you as the chair.
No, that's a good suggestion, John. Thank you. Yes, I was when Chief Judge Morrissey was joking about herding judges, it's like herding cats. I was going to say, no, it's like herding lawyers. So yes, I understand. And I think that's a good suggestion. So unless John or other DLS staff, Chief Justice Fader, Justice Braun, Judge Mayer, Chief Judge Morrissey, thank you for your time. Unless anyone else has any other questions for the judiciary, I think we'll let you get on with your evenings.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. If there's anything else you need, please ask.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan, I think one thing too would be helpful too for them to summarize and just have that in hand on what the recommendations were, because frankly, I wouldn't have been able to regurgitate them at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the one thing that I didn't see, but I think Judge Mayer said it, but I hadn't appreciated it, was the percentage increase. I saw them give the dollar amount proposed, but not a percentage. So I think, John, is the best way to do that to have you go back to them and ask for sort of a one pager that would summarize the recommendations, or would you like me to do that?
Well, I can do that on behalf of the commission, ask them for a one pager about their recommendations.
But I think,
I think Judge Mayer's, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
I was just gonna say, I thought Judge Mayer's request was a dollar for dollar increase,
Correct.
and not a percentage.
Right.
Oh, yes. No, absolutely. You're correct. I just meant conceptually, I heard her say that it was I thought she said a 12.5% increase, which was 6% less. Anyway, that's what I'm trying to understand, is sort of what percentage would it be?
Yeah.
So if you remember last term, and I have the numbers pulled up, we purposely gave a greater increase percentage-wise for the lower court. I mean, for the lower judges, and so I think if I remember correct, the Supreme Court Chief Justice received 18.6%, but everyone else received 20 and a higher below that. And I think the highest was the District Court Associate Judge received 24%. So I think we were cognizant of those lower level members, getting them more money. So now that was percentage. But as Ms. Mitchell said, Monica said that this time they requested dollar for dollar opposed to the percentage, which I thought the percentage back made sense. But
Well, last time they all got the exact same amount. It just turned out to be different percentages depending on where their starting
Right.
was. So they each got $10,000 a year.
Right.
For a total of $40,000 over the 4-year period of time. But for the lower rankers, it was a higher percentage, and for the higher, it was a lower percentage.
fair enough.
You figured it out, if you stopped to figure it out.
Hey, John, I was wondering, it sounded to me like when Scott went over his presentation, where they rank in the percentile stuff, it seemed like your numbers had them in the upper third in most of the categories, but their presentation made it sound as if they were lower. Was that an apples and oranges data? Because they made it sound like they were not as high up as I thought Scott's presentation showed.
So I understood that to be based on the cost of living that they are applying, and I didn't study it closely enough to do all the math, but they are applying sort of a cost of living factor. And when you factor that in, given how high cost of living is in the DC metro area, they rank much lower than nationally.
Well, I think the only way to do that right would be then the other states should factor in their cost of living, because it's an apples and oranges thing.
Right.
And it's I was a little uncomfortable with that, because not that they're playing loose and fast, but it looked like they were putting them in a light that was more need than I thought the other chart the staffers had.
I think they did, or at least I think they were trying to. The charts that they have on pages 8 through 13 of their report, the third column is the cost of living factor, and it's different for every state based on a national survey or national. So again, I didn't have the time to study it closely, but I think they were trying to factor in whatever each particular state's cost of living factor is, as best they could.
I think I would have to go back and read that, because I agree with John when I heard that versus what I read. Because what I read was what you just said, Megan. And they talk about national ranking, Supreme Court justices at 10% national rank, and the highest appellate associate judges were at 13%. But when they presented, though, it seemed to be they were in the 30s. So I was a little thrown off by the numbers now, and it could just be my reading. So no worries there. So I need to study that a little bit more, because I agree with you, John. When I heard it versus what I read, I thought they were different.
I thought it was also interesting, and they tipped their hand. They talked to legislators, but they came in. The very first chart on Tanya's thing to me was the most powerful chart that I saw at all. Was that budget deficit that this state is staring at in the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the state's laying people off, and I just, my initial reaction, and I haven't digested all the stuff, and I need feedback from each of you. But my initial reaction is that I'm personally thinking that this may be a term that I would not vote for an increase, given this personnel issues, the salary, the layoffs, and so forth. And they've tipped their hand by basically asking, going for the first 2 years with zero, which tells you that they realize that this is a very tough time to ask for pay raises for people who are making a decent salary. So I just thought that was a little interesting. And just for me, this is just me. There's going to have to be some good data to make me feel like that I would vote to support an increase.
Well, I think we had this conversation too last time.
2 years.
I think the challenge is this: they are asking for a 2-year hold, right? But inflation is still going up exponentially, right? So at the end of those 2 years, then they're going to get their first increase. So that means that they will have gone how many years now without an increase at all, and inflation is still going up. So I think it's a negotiation tactic, true, but I don't think it's a malicious one. I
never said the word malicious.
No.
I recognition that this is a tough time to sell salary increase. I guess is my point.
Yeah.
And we won't know. I didn't want to butt in before, but I said I worked as a deputy secretary for budget management. So you won't know the state salary employees increases until the governor unveils his budget. And I know John knows that, and the guys know that. But until when the governor unveils that budget, like a couple of days after the session starts, so you're talking about the third week in January. So we're not going to know that. I think they're estimating 1% to 2%. If you heard that presentation, so that's almost flatline for the governor to say, I'm barely asking for an increase, if at all. So I think we need to go into knowing that state employees are not going to get a windfall, and there could be more layoffs. I think there's going to be some more layoffs coming. So I think it all kind of gets thrown into the pot of what's going to be the compensation environment for the state in the next 4 years.
So I agree, John. I think that's important information, which is why I appreciated Victoria's question at the outset about, do we know, or when will we know what the other commissions are doing around executive or legislative salaries? Also, I think getting that, if we can, John, historic information, because I remember I was working for the state attorney general from 2015 to 2019 when we had, or 2018, when we had no cost of living increases as state employees for 4 years, and it extended beyond my time. And so I think kind of having that information, what was going on with state employee salaries at the same time of understanding what judicial salary increases were as approved by this commission over the last, let's say, 10 years or so,
Yeah.
I think would be helpful.
Yeah, because I know it would not be unprecedented if this commission decided not to vote for an increase, because it has happened in the past. So I think it's important for us to know that, I mean, we have everything in front of us, but it's not unprecedented. And my experience in working with the legislators for 40 years, that legislator telling Fader, ask for 0 the first 2 years, is basically saying you might get half a loaf at best. So I think that's how I read the political tea leaves on that. And that's why I think they came in with 0 for the first 2 years, which is smart on their part. But I think the legislature realizes that, with the blueprint and the cost for the blueprint, who knows what year 3 and year 4 are going to be.
Hey, quick question. I know we had this conversation last time too. What authorities do we have? So right now we're speculating like we always do, as we should. But at the end of 2 years, if things are much more, inflation is worse, do we have the authority to go back and say, look, we have, because, and I think that's some of the challenge, because 4 years is a long time out, right? And so right now we're saying they're not going to get anything the first 2 years. That's fine. But then we may get into year 3 and realize, wow,
Well, Carlos, I think we asked that
people,
question I think we asked that question 4 years ago, and I think what the answer was, we cannot have an interim come back and have another thing.
Right.
So
Exactly.
what we recommend by the end of this month is going to be for 4 more years.
Absolutely.
And we can't kind of come back 2 years later and say we want to do a redo. So I think it's like what we recommend in the next month is going to be our recommendation for 4 years.
Exactly. And that was on point. So I think we go either way, right? We either err on the side of giving a raise or versus not. I get your point. And like you said, we don't know. And decisions that we make today are going to be decisions that's going to hold pretty steady for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And are we able to consider the stipend question separate from the salary increase question?
Yes. Yes.
I think so. I would like to, if we could do
Yeah,
that.
I would like to.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Raphael, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, by when do we have to make a decision? I understood by the end of December. That's a little problematic based upon what everybody's been talking about. You're waiting for the attorney general, waiting for this one. I don't, do we have enough time? I mean, maybe we need 2 meetings. I don't know. This is my first time I'm on the committee. That's why I didn't ask any questions. I'm just absorbing everything. But the timeline worries me more than anything. We'll make a decision, without a doubt.
Right. Yeah.
John, do you want to answer that? Speak to that?
I'm
sorry, John Edwards.
Yeah. Thank you.
So yes, it has to be at the end of December, make the recommendation. And then we all put together a report and then you all sign off on it. The holidays do present an extra challenge because it'll be harder to get people together. But I do think there still is time for another meeting. I think especially since I'm trying to get in, especially the information around the stipend. But like I said, in my experience as a drafter, when we reach out to the AG, they get back to us in a couple days. So a meeting next week, we should have an answer for you in terms of what their opinion is about the stipends. So I don't think the waiting for the Attorney General is something to be concerned about. So meeting next week would be fine.
Okay.
So, would it be realistic for us to expect that if we met next week, we could have a decision on what kind of salary increase we're recommending, as well as the stipend issue? We can tie them both up in one more meeting.
I think we could. I mean, I think there's additional information we're asking John and DLS to compile for us, but assuming so that's a heavier lift on all of you from DLS, but assuming they're able to do that, I don't see why we can't vote at our next meeting. Right. I do want to, though, kind of circle back to what Carlos, you and John were just discussing, which is that we have to be a little bit prognosticators here. We don't have complete, obviously, information about what's going to happen over the next 4 years. We don't know what decisions the General Assembly is going to make in the next 4 months about how they might try to resolve the structural deficit in the state budget. We don't know, as you just said, John, what the governor is going to recommend for salary increases for state employees. So I think as much as we can glean from past years' information, that can help guide us on what we should do. Because I am cognizant of the fact that if we were to recommend no increase at all, that can't be changed for 4 years' time.
That's right.
And that makes me uncomfortable. So I can see why, as you said, John, why it would be that the legislative staff would make that recommendation to Chief Justice Fader. I think it's worth thinking about what effect, right? The effect of our decisions is not just a 1-year effect, it's a 4-year effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a big effect. I didn't chime in when the question was raised with respect to people applying for judgeships. I can assure you, okay, as a private practitioner, that's the first thing you look at, the numbers and supporting your family. So that's a big issue. That's a big issue.
Right. No, absolutely. And I do understand, and the judiciary themselves, they said it, they're cognizant of it, that they are much better compensated than most public servants, than most people in the state of Maryland. But relative to how they could do in private practice or even in the federal system, there's a concern that we are not incentivizing people who are very capable and otherwise would be very good in that role to become judges. And it's critically important that we have really good people in those roles.
It's
Hey,
interesting.
one quick question, Megan, and maybe I missed this. When they gave their recommendation, or the request for us to give a recommendation, what was the total amount that would be spent? So if we went with the 2 years, no increase, and then the 2 years based on what they said at the end, how much money are we talking about actually at the end of the day?
So that they did not answer that, and that could be a question to ask them, John. It's $2,700 per judge, but I don't know what that means, right? I think Chief Judge Morrissey said that for the stipend across the entire judiciary, if that were to be implemented, it would be $300,000. I don't know what it would be if there's a $27,500 increase for each judge in the judiciary over a 4-year period. I don't know what that amounts to.
Two-year period, 2 year.
Yeah, 2 years.
Oh, right, but I mean, over the course of 4,
right.
John, I think that's something you guys can do an analysis of that pretty quickly, I would think. The cost of their recommendation.
That would be something we can include in the supplemental information that we'll send out to y'all in between this and when the next meeting is.
Okay.
And John, you also said, I think you mentioned that we really won't know what the cost of living increase will be until when you say end of the session, correct?
The governor will present his budget. The session comes back in, I think, the second Wednesday of January, something like that, third Wednesday. And then it's usually, with the statute says within 10 days of the session starting, governor has to present his budget. So you're talking about the third week in January. Typically, the governor will unveil his budget, and that's when you'll find out how much every agency's getting, what kind of salaries, how many people, layoffs, hires. But as I said, working with the DBM, that is closely guarded until the governor unveils that. I mean, that is on DEFCON 5. No one, that's that stuff.
Right. So, so the historical information, so I think we've asked for, over the last 10 years, what have been the percentage increases in state employee salaries? What were the increases in salaries for the judiciary? Should we also see if we could, John, could we get the increases in the salaries for the governor and the General Assembly over the last 10 years also? Thank you. Any other historical information that anyone else in the commission would like to see?
One thing I would ask for, John, since it's once every 4 years, if you could go back more than 10 years on the judiciary, because that's only going to be like 2 terms.
Right. Good point.
If you can do like at least 3 or 4 terms. I'm certain that, as Carlos had found it, it's in that document from 4 years ago. It was a very helpful because it gave us a trend on how, what's been the historical kind of stuff. And that was helpful for all of us, I think. So
Yeah, I
it's
think
got to be floating around in your new building. I know it is.
yeah, I think they at least have into the 90s. 'Cause I think we found that chart that you all are talking about. So we
Okay.
can have that
The
as long
90s would be more than great. That would be great.
we'll have that as long with the Governor General Assembly and judicial salaries. We'll ask also for the judiciary to make a one-pager and include what the total percentage and total amount that they're going to be asking for. Not just the individual one that they gave in their presentation, but like the total thing that they're asking for. Um, I've reached out to the AG, and I can also see if there is any sort of information we can get from those other commissions. See if there's just anything at all that they could tell us that might be helpful.
Is there any value in and it may not be, so I'm just going to ask the question. And looking at the overall Marylander increase over time as well, and because really at the end of the day, uh, you know, let's look at what Marylanders overall, what is the increase in their salaries over 12%, and that should be open and available, I would think.
Mhm.
I don't know if anyone thinks that may have some value. Then the second thing I would ask, Raphael, since we're talking about trying to maintain judges in the system versus being out, is there any metrics we should look at from a private sector that should play into our decision as well? Because that's really what the difference is, right? We're trying to maintain members in the system instead of them fleeing to go out into private practice. So I mean, I don't know, are there metrics that you can think of that we should look at as well in our thought process?
Well, I mean, what a first year associate makes, they had some of that in their report,
They did.
yeah.
We could ask I don't know if the judiciary, if they have those statistics about when judges leave prior to mandatory retirement in the Maryland judiciary is 70 years old. When
Mhm.
judges leave prior to mandatory retirement, for what reasons do they cite? I don't know if that's data that's been compiled. I mean, some of the judges had anecdotal examples they could give, but my own anecdotal sense is that it is not common once someone has been appointed to be a judge for them to leave to go back into the private sector. It does happen, but it's pretty rare is my anecdotal sense.
Yeah, I can tell you, it is rare. Most of them become mediators or arbitrators. That's where they go. They don't go into the private sector. Some do. Some district court judges do, but it's very rare. Very rare. But can we focus on the stipend issue? That's a one time. I think that's going to maybe turn this whole discussion. The stipend issue is if it's a one-time event or maybe two times event, and then it goes away. That might be the way to resolve the budget problem.
I understood it to be every year.
Every year. It said it was
See, I think
annual.
that's a problem. And for
Well,
me,
it is every year, but it's not added to their base salary, which makes a difference,
right.
right?
That's the issue, the base salary, right?
And it's not every judge.
That's right. That's right. That's true. It's
About
administrative only.
36 judges, I believe. He mentioned administrative judges.
That's correct. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
36.
Right.
Annual stipend, yes.
Right. Right. That's
Well, I mean, so here's the thing too. Can we get creative here? And Ms. Edwards, I asked this question to you in a sense. What if we went with not giving a raise, but giving a stipend, and then therefore for everybody, right?
That was,
And I'm sorry, go ahead, Monica. But I think we do that, and we can even say, give us a lesser stipend over 4 years, opposed to just doing, the 2 years at a higher stipend. I mean, I think we can play with some things here. I don't know if we have the authorities to do that, but if we do, we should maybe consider that, and then we can control the total amount up front.
I
are you
was more so
recommending a
curious.
stipend?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to understand, are you recommending a stipend for every judge?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah. So I was given an alternative, and again, we're not there yet. But if we look at the numbers and we go, wow, this is going to be that 27,000 per judge. If it's an excessive amount, but that's again
Like
only at the last
10
2 years,
almost
right?
$11 million.
Right. And again, I mean, I work for the federal government, so Department of Defense. So sometimes we say, $11 million may not be much for that, but on our state level, it has optics that are totally different, right?
Right.
So I think we have to take this consideration and say, well, what if we gave them something, but we came in at less and did it over 4 years opposed to doing it in the last two?
Sorry, so I just want to, but before we keep going, I just see it's 7:40. John, we're still live streaming, is that,
Yeah,
or,
the meeting is live, so it keeps going until it is adjourned.
right, okay. So I think we can, I don't have a hard stop. I think we can continue our discussion this evening, but I just wanted to sort of give everybody a mental note of sort of where we are in the evening. So I do think it's your question, Carlos, is a good one about kind of what is our authority, and in framing something as a stipend versus a annual salary increase. I think maybe that's part of the question for the Attorney General's office, John, is what do we have the authority to do?
Well, what is the difference between a stipend and a salary increase?
So salaries increase, you would increase it to their base salary, then it becomes by law their salary moving forward. That when we talk about high threes and things like that, that would be their salary. You don't decrease that you would be
Right.
decreasing someone's salary.
So
But with a
stipend is like a bonus.
It was like a
correct,
bonus,
yeah, absolutely, and it's a set amount that you give. So you could theoretically give somebody the same amount of stipend, but it wouldn't be given to their salary, which makes a little difference in terms of how we issue this out over time.
I understand.
Yeah.
I'm interested in learning about like trends with other states with judges paying judges stipends. I don't know how common this is. I'm also new to the commission, but I don't know how common it is for judges to get stipends. Is there any data on that? I scanned through the report and I didn't see anything about that. But if maybe this was something that was discussed 4 years ago when it
They're
first came up.
recommending it now for the administrative judges to get basically stipend. That's because that's not going to their base salary. It's just a one time per year for the next 4 years, and after that, it's going to drop off. So that would be an example of what they're recommending, even for those. I think how many did you say, Monica, total? It was
It's 397 judges, but I think there were I think Chanel was
20.
the one who mentioned how many
36
administrative.
administrative.
Yeah.
administrative.
Yeah.
So I think this is the section of their report, Chanel, that talks about the difference in the salary, additional salary that would go to chief judges or administrative judges in different states. This is pages 16 to 17. But I don't know if your question is like, do other states characterize it as stipends? I don't know. The way they describe it in this report is they say that there's an additional salary supplement associated with that additional administrative role. So, but that we could, if you wanted, I think that's something we could ask the judiciary for, if there's more information about that would be helpful about what other states do or how other states characterize it. Maybe would that be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, and if it's a supplement, like I guess is a stipend the same as a supplement? Does the language help it a little bit to go over easier?
I think the intent for
I think
me
the
was
language is very important.
because I asked him the question, are you increasing their base salary? He said no. And so I think your points were taken. Actually, I like the word supplement better than the word stipend or bonus for sure.
I don't think it's going to count
For sure, right? But if it's the same concept, then I think that's the main thing, right? Are we talking about a one time which is going to expire, or are we talking about a perpetual increasing base salary in perpetuity?
That's it. I think that's the key to the whole. It's going to be the key to, I think, our decision making. Just something in the back of my head, something about it's unconstitutional to reduce a judge's salary. Something in the back of my head, because I've had to represent some judges and issues with child support and all. That's in the back of my head. But since they're recommending it, I think we're okay.
Well, and that's why I asked the question. Reduce their salaries, and that's why I said Right. A supplement wouldn't be, I mean, we define base pay or base salary and supplement bonus is very different, right? They're in different categories. So we recommended giving them a, annual one-time increase to, I mean, supplement that's not
Supplement.
salary.
John, can
Or
we have an attorney general's opinion on that just to make sure?
Well,
Yeah,
I
fair
think
enough.
and that's the key. I think Chief Judge Morrissey said, you remember he said that the supplement or the additional amount he gets is only while he is has the position
Right,
of
right.
Chief Judge, but he said that's in the statute. And
right.
so it could be that at the end of the day, what we're doing, as I think Justice Buran even contemplated this, that what we're doing is making recommendations to the General Assembly to change the statute to provide an additional
Mhm.
supplement to those who hold the position of administrative judge while they hold that
Right.
position, something like that.
Mhm.
Do we know how they came up with the 7,500 recommendation? I don't remember them.
Yeah.
So when I asked that, the answer to the question was that, well, when you look at the sort of the levels of salary, and that's found on page 14 of their report, 7,500 is sort of an incremental increase between one salary level and the next. So if district court judge is 201, 7,500 is sort of incremental between there and circuit court judge, which is the next level.
Thank you.
That's how they defined it.
Thank you.
I don't know whether the stipend will be factored into the retirement calculation. So they may see that as half a loaf also, instead of a salary increase.
Well, we absolutely would not have any impact on salary because it wouldn't be because salary is based on your I'm sorry, retirement is based on your base pay. This right here would drop off and it wouldn't, I'm almost certain that would not calculate into retirement at all.
Right. What I know, I agree, but I think they may think that that is getting half a loaf because if you got a pay increase, that salary increases, and that gets factored into the
Sure.
retirement calculation. Stipend, I don't think will, and I don't know whether they'll kind of think that was fringe on it or cringe on it or whatever. I don't think it'll factor into the pension calculation when they do their retirement benefit.
Well, I tell you this, they won't know what we don't do. And I would tell you this, if we decided to not give them a bonus at all for 4 years, I think that'll go over worse. So, it's nice that we could walk out of here and say, hey, guys, we decided to do something versus nothing. We could have done nothing. That would have been great for them to know the difference. But they'll never know. If we decide to give them something, the alternative would have been to do nothing. You get what I'm saying? And I mean, we're not at a vote yet by no means, but it's hard for me to not imagine making some type of opportunity for them to get an increase of something over the next 4 years. That's a long time, and we don't know what's going on over that period of time.
Is that Victoria who joined the?
Who joined? Let's see. Oh, did somebody drop off? I think so.
Yeah, Ms. Treadwell
iPhone
had
34.
connective,
That's very well.
lost her connection, so she couldn't get back on, and but I'm not sure who.
Sorry, should we ask them to identify themselves? Who is the iPhone 34 who just joined the meeting? Oh, it is Victoria. Hi, Victoria.
Sorry.
That's okay. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I mean, I think to your point, Carlos, I think our deliberations are public. So I think,
Okay.
the judges will be aware, I think, right, John?
Oh, I'm sorry, which John?
Sorry, Carlos was sort of commenting on what the judges, what impression they would take from what we end up deciding. And I was commenting that our deliberations, at least thus far, are public. So I think they.
Okay, if that's the case, then that's good to know. Okay.
I also just wanted to let you know, we did get some information from last year that the group did, in fact, get a recommendation from the OAG about the stipend issue. They said that this commission does have the authority to give stipends if you all choose to.
Oh, that's
Okay.
very helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
That never got back to us.
Not that I remember.
I don't think so.
And,
No.
and John, they use the word stipend.
Mm, I'm sorry. I'm just trying to find. I don't necessarily see the word stipend used.
Okay, I think there's sort of two questions about stipend. The one question is a legal question, which I think, John, you'll clarify with the Attorney General's office around whether the law requires us to word it that way or word it as a supplement, or I think that's important to clarify. I think separately there's sort of an optics point to it about if the law allows us to call it whatever we want, as long as it's having the same effect. There, I could see where it is. I think one of you was saying earlier, supplement sounds better than stipend. So I think we just want to understand first and foremost what the law requires or prohibits.
And one other thing, I know he mentioned every year annually, and I'm guessing, is this indefinitely, or is this something that we will decide and revisit every 4 years to see if 7,500 should be changed? And if we are going to be assessing that every 4 years, it might be, well, I do see the data that's there, but it might be good to also have trending data for other states and seeing how that might fluctuate over time for comparison purposes. So annually and definitely, or something that we will be deciding every year.
I think, I'm sorry, go
every
ahead.
4 years.
I was going to say, I'm going to guess they'll be back a few years 4 years from now and tell us that 7,500 needs to be 10,000.
Right.
But then I'd be disappointed, I think, if they didn't do that. But
Well, also too, I think Megan, you may have said this too, or maybe John, that what we're really requesting for is this change in statute, right? Kind of like Justice Morrissey said, in his position, he gets X amount, but that's by statute, right?
I think my question is it necessary? Is it necessary to change the statute in order for us to make this recommendation and for the General Assembly to implement the recommendation? Or do we actually have to change the wording of the statute to require it? I just don't know the answer to that.
So from last year, I'm looking at what was forwarded to me from last year. They do, the Attorney General did say you can give a stipend and use the term stipend. You can say that the salary is X plus an additional stipend of X.
Okay. So we could make a recommendation that said, for example, we recommend that in fiscal year 2006, the salary of a circuit court judge will be X, and an administrative judge of the circuit court will be X plus a stipend of Y.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well,
that's great.
So
Go
question,
I'm sorry,
for the purposes of the salary recommendations, the General Assembly can't decrease salary recommendations. So for the purposes of that, is stipend classified under salary recommendations, or is that separate?
Good question.
So they can decrease it, they just can't decrease it below the current level. And since there is no current stipend, they could reduce it to 0, but that's all they could do if you recommend a stipend.
But I think but I think a question is the same though. Is a stipend a part of salary?
Right.
And I think that, personally I would think it's not, but I need to know what the law says, right? So because if it's a stipend, it's not like you just said, you got salary plus additional stipend. That definition to me sounds as though those two are separate. So you can't decrease their base pay, but a stipend is something that you get as an additional benefit. It's not a requirement.
well, and don't they rotate? You
Yes.
could be the administrative judge this year and not be next year. It's somebody else. So then you lose it next year and somebody else gets it that year.
I can tell you in Baltimore County, we do not rotate.
Okay, well,
I don't know all the other counties.
But that would be correct. Like a new administrative judge was just named in Montgomery County.
Right. Yes.
And that person, if we were to recommend this and the General Assembly were to adopt it, that person would be entitled to this stipend for however many years she remained the administrative judge, but then not thereafter.
Correct.
But again, Megan, that would be a statute change in that case.
I think that's the thing that it sounds like we did get some advice from the Attorney General's office 4 years ago. But that's the thing that I'm hoping still we can further clarify with the Attorney General's office to
The stipend
understand.
goes, yeah, the stipend goes with the position, not the individual.
Right.
So it has to be clarified that way. And then I don't know how they handle it in payroll. You know, you go up, you go down, you go up, you go down. If if you go in, you go out of being an administrative judge, if that happens in some jurisdictions.
Just a thought as I'm listening to all this. If we go down the stipend route, whatever way we want to do it, none of the other state employees are going to get stipends. So we're introducing a whole new concept to a class of employees that I wonder if that's going to be problematic for the legislators, because you're going to have everyone was going to want a stipend. So we need to, between now and our next meeting or whatever, we need to think that through, because I think that could be somewhat problematic about creating a stipend for an upper class of employees for the state.
Well, but it's no different than what Chief Justice Morrissey said he received, right? Due to his position, he received a stipend.
It's written into a statute that created his office, it sounds like.
Right.
That's the way I'm reading it.
Okay.
Right. I see the distinction you're drawing, John.
Yeah.
Just a thought, and just that I could see how that could be labor unions. I could see AFs,
absolutely,
all that coming in. We want stipends too. We're losing salary. I could just see how that plays out in hearings.
That's fair.
Look, Carla, I love the fact that we're throwing everything up against the wall, but I think just trying to understand how it could be foreseen. The challenge, I think, on the damn commission is we make a decision, it's in stone for 4 years.
For 4 years, yeah.
So I mean that's why it is a role in both ways. You don't you good or bad. So it's a challenging type of thing for us on this, how to do it, and that's why they pay us the big bucks to sit on this call, work this out, right, Vicky?
Well, that's right. That's right.
Thinking about like trends, that's why I thought it would be helpful to even if we know what other agencies follow a practice where they, give stipends.
Right.
Would we be the first agency to introduce this? Which, if we are, it could cause a ripple effect in other areas. So I think that's a really good point to consider.
John, maybe is there any way you could just talk to the personnel office of personnel management just to get a sense on, or in DBM just to get a sense on if stipends are being used in any other agencies, so we can see if it's precedent setting or if it's, hey, it's happening more than you think. It wouldn't kind of be a first time ever, and it may be more easily received or something like that, because they would know all the classifications in the state and what kind of compensation what types of compensation they're getting. I remember years ago, there was a one or 2 year where there was a bonus even made available, I think, for a story. I think they didn't get a COLA, but then they got a bonus or something like that. So there is some flexibility in the state personnel payroll system. But I've been away from it long enough to know that I don't know what's happening today. So if you could take their temperature, that might be helpful for us.
I can reach out and see if they have that information.
And I think I promise this is going to be my last comment on the topic. One thing too is I think we had this conversation last time too, because we were trying to project the future of the next 4 years. So as we sit here and look at whether we increase the salaries or we give bonuses, we're doing it based on, like you said, it's speculative, kind of like the stock market. Is there a way, John, that we can put into place in the language that says, if X happens, do X? So do Y. So meaning that, let's say that we go, if there's an increase in inflation over blah, 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 over a period of time, because like I said, otherwise we're going to make a statement that's going to be on the books for 4 years. And if in that 4th year, let's say we take their recommendation, do not do anything the first 2 years. But then The last 2 years, you're looking at a massive, massive inflation. And if we decide to do nothing, those individuals they will be out of luck in a sense. So can we create a language that allows us to, if X happens, we do Y?
Yeah, a condition precedent and a condition
Correct.
subsequent. That's what yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
legal term.
Looking for some kind of trigger type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah, you could try to find it, tie it into like if general state employees get a 2% X amount of thing, then the judiciary would get Y. I mean, that's something we could, that way it's hinged to, well, they must be giving some money out, so maybe
Right.
it's better versus that. I mean, we could get creative and have a trigger that's connected. So this tie's going up for all of them.
Yeah.
Instead of just one type of thing.
or nobody gets nothing.
Or nobody gets
Correct.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's something, I think that's worth asking OAG also, John, if that's permissible.
Mm-hmm.
Because the idea, when I asked her about why they loaded it to the back end, she said, we're hoping they're gonna put some fixes in. I spent 13 years working with the legislature. Every year they were gonna put fixes in.
Yeah.
Just doesn't happen. They
Right.
never can quite figure it out. And so, I hold out no hope for that this time either.
Right, and well, and it's a good point that those of us who were here 4 years ago remember the state was in a very different. We were in a surplus position 4 years ago, and how dramatically things have changed. And the General Assembly managed to. My recollection is they managed to address the deficit at least for 1 year last year, but now here we are.
Yeah.
Again, so I do think year over year there will be and I don't know if I want to say fixes, but there will be things that the General Assembly will be doing to address that. I don't it's hard to see how we continue with that cliff.
Well, the only problem with that, Megan, is that last year they raised taxes and fees. So, I just keep harking back to that very first chart that Tanya showed. I mean, that looked like an alpine ski slope going downhill for 4 years. And even if there's a little bit of a turnaround, that's going to be tough to dig out of. And I know it's driven a lot by the spending for the blueprint in education.
Yeah.
And so that's the only really, really big ticket that the state has some discretion on to get it out of a $4 billion deficit.
Right.
That spending is 3.2, I think, something like that.
Yep.
Before we go, we're going to try and get a date.
Yes. So, should everyone look at their calendars? I think you were saying, John, it's a good point that Thursday and Friday of next week, we start getting into periods when people may be traveling for the holidays. So,
I can do anything Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if that works for everybody else, but Thursday.
Should we?
And I'll throw this out there too. When I'm going to be again out of the country again, so I'll be calling from Germany. Wednesday, I think it looks like going to be the best day for me. But then again, it would be. Let me see. I would be 6 hours ahead. So,
is it possible to do a meeting at noon, from noon to 1, as opposed to at nighttime? Because unfortunately, I go to a lot of functions and I've already missed 2 meetings tonight because of.
It's fine with me, and that would probably work better. If you're 6 hours ahead, Carlos, if we were this late, it would be 2 in the morning for you. So, and Wednesday, I think in an ideal world, if it works for others, that gives DLS a little more time to move forward some of the questions that we had asked. So, how does midday on Wednesday look for others?
Works for me.
So I'm okay with it being late, because that guarantees I'm not in meetings, right? And so if we wanted to do, because midday is going to limit how much time we can talk too. I guess that may be a good thing, but I think
so midday, so 12 to 1 or 12 to 2 or something like that. Eastern time would be 6 to 8.
Yeah, my time
for you, Carlos.
Yeah, that's right.
So we're thinking 12 to 2 on Wednesday.
At least 12 to 1.
Or 12 to 1:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't have any presentations to look at, so we're just going to be reacting to the whatever the team can get to us and making decisions.
That's right. So it actually shouldn't, I think an hour probably will be sufficient.
Is it possible just to do it with just us and not invite the judiciary back?
Yes.
Well, they can watch a live stream, it seems like, but.
Yes, I agree. I don't, unless anything that we learn over the course of the next few days
Right.
would suggest that we need to speak with them further. I agree. I think we could do it just ourselves.
Is there anything we need to get clarification from them that we can do that prior to, right? Like,
I think John is asking for that in writing.
okay.
Yeah, the one pager just to summarize and get the lump sum of all the judges, what that would cost and the percentages and everything.
Right.
So John, we
Right.
haven't asked you and the staff, can you guys do Wednesday, 12 to 1:30?
I think that should be fine. Scott, does that work for you?
Yeah, next Wednesday should work just fine for me.
Okay.
What day is that, by the way? What is that?
The
The
17th.
The 17th.
17th. Okay.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Chanel, Monica, does that work for the two of you?
It does.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it works for Jesus, so I think everyone's on board.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, John?
It works for Jesus, who's our.
Oh, good. Okay, great.
We do need-
Perfect.
He runs all the tech, so we really.
Oh, that's the most important then. Okay.
John, just send us an invite to everybody.
Yep.
Or Jesus will send an invite.
Ask Jesus to send us an invite.
Oh yeah, we'll get that out to you.
Okay, very good. Well, I think I think I have the prerogative then to call this meeting adjourned, unless anyone has anything else that they'd like to discuss this evening.
Nope. I second your adjournment.
Thank you.
Good job, Madam Chair.
All right.
All right. Have a good evening, everybody. We'll see you next week. And John, please, if I can be helpful or if we need to talk offline, please